Hey folks, it's Pete. It's been a terrible, terrible day uh, learning about the tragic loss of my good friend Chris Cornell. And so I feel like I don't really know what to do other than talk to friends and maybe get some of my thoughts out. I can't go on doing anything else without processing a little bit. So I just thought maybe I don't even know if this is the right thing to do, but I just thought maybe I would get a few of my thoughts out and kind of like a therapy session, basically. So what I thought I would do is just maybe tell a few stories about this guy and about my association with him and what a wonderful person he was and what a fantastic friend he was to me. And nothing too personal, but I thought maybe I could shed some light and share some insight, just so you guys know a little bit more about what a fantastic person he was and how lucky I feel like I was to know him. So I'll try and not break down too much during this, but hopefully I'm just going to talk off the cuff, and maybe you guys will find some of this interesting. So going back to the beginning, uh, I got a call to go audition for him in 2007, maybe about February, March, something like that. 2007, and I learned 5 of his songs, Soundgarden Audio Slave, some solo songs, in about 12 hours. I got a call to go audition in 12 hours, and it's really short notice, but I loved Chris Cornell and his music, so it was like, of course I'm going to do this. So I stayed up basically all night and learned the music as best I could, and slept for a couple hours, set my alarm, woke up, kept working on it in the morning, and went down about noon to a rehearsal facility here in LA, and went in and set up, and I just was stoked to have the opportunity to play that guy's music, with that guy. I mean, come on, So I did it, and then I got a call back to go back the next day again, and that was thrilling. And I remember going back and playing again, and he pulled me aside at one point and said, I really like how you play and what you do. Is this something you would be interested in doing? Because I think you might be really good at it. And I just said, man, you're one of the greatest rock and roll singers of all time. And if you want me, I'm here for you. And so then about a week went by, and I thought, oh, maybe it's not going to happen. And I got a call to go back and play one more time. And he was going to listen to 2 guitar players, me and my friend Yogi Lonich, who I'd never played with in a band, but Yogi and I had known each other for years. And I thought, I'm going to call Yogi and just talk to him. So I called Yogi and I said, dude, let's go there tomorrow. Because he wanted us to play together, And I said, let's talk about all these songs tonight, because by that point we were up to about 9 songs, knowing in the audition process. And so I said, let's talk about all the parts and everything, split them up over the phone tonight. Let's go in there like a guitar team tomorrow, and just do the best we can as a team. And Yogi loved that idea, and he was totally amenable to that. And so we split up all the parts. It's like, we're going to do, Black Hole Sun. You take the solo, I'll play the rotary part at the beginning, things like that. And we just had it all really split and organized. And then we went into play, and we played the songs down, and I remember Chris commenting to Barry, the guy that hooked up the audition. He commented, he said, it's like these guys have already rehearsed together, like they're a band, And we got a call about an hour after the callback that day, and said that they wanted to hire us. And I can still remember I lived about a mile from where I am right now, and getting that call and just being like, oh, like, I can't believe it, And I was so excited. And we started rehearsing the very next day, and we did about 3 weeks rehearsal. And what would happen is we would get 3 songs in our email every night, MP3s from the management company, and we would learn those and go in the next day and add to them. So we had about 9 at the end of the audition process, then we would add 3 the next day. And then go in and rehearse. We'd add those three, go over all of them. And then that night at home, we would get an email with three more songs, and learn those the next day. And that period was so magic because it was like you get your email at night and it's like Sun Shower, Slaves and Bulldozers, and Like a Stone or whatever, like three songs in your email. Next day it would be Rusty Cage and on and on and on. And it was like, oh, fuck, I can't believe we're going to get to play these songs with this guy. I was still in shock over the whole thing, And it was like going to school because we had so much material to learn so quickly. What a fun period. So then we got out on tour. The first show we did was some Yahoo Music thing, but then the first actual gig. Oh, let me back up for a second, actually. Phone's ringing. I'll answer it. So let me back up for a second. Chris could seem like a little bit like unapproachable, or maybe just quiet or brooding or something, like a little intimidating. Plus he, those eyes like a husky and stuff. He was a little intimidating until you saw like what a fun, intelligent, kind of goofball, amazing good time he actually really was. That every now and then you just break through to that. And so one of these moments this is about 3 days into rehearsing. I remember being in this big rehearsal facility, and he's very quiet. He'd come in, and we all were trying to put on our best front and everything like that, like for the boss, and because we hadn't really figured out what kind of guy he was yet. And I remember him sitting there and kind of like not saying much, and then looking across the room at the trash can on the other side of the room. It was way across the other side of the room. He was sitting on a stool, and he said, "I wonder if I could get this stool in that trash can." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he stood up and he picked up the stool and he threw that fucking stool across the room as hard as he could, and it hit the wall above the trash can and exploded into like 20 pieces, and we all fell out laughing, and it was just, he's like, "Oh, I guess it didn't quite make it," and I was like, "Oh, he's like this," and it was just so, he had this really amazing kind of like jokester personality that came out sometimes. I remember another time buying him, because we knew he would love this, we got him a slingshot for his birthday. And it lasted about, just as a goofy gift, and it lasted about 5 minutes. We were at Massey Hall in Toronto. We were in the dressing rooms, which are upstairs at Massey Hall. And he was shooting at things, nothing bad, but he was like playing with it out the window at Massey Hall. And he pulled the slingshot back and snapped it right off, because that's just how he was, And just really, really, really fun. And love to kind of clown around, and so I started to realize like what a kind of salt of the earth, like down to earth person he really was. That just loved playing music and loved being creative, super intelligent, highly thoughtful, but also shared a lot of stories about he came from not a wealthy background. He came from nothing really. And he literally, scraped shrimp off the floor in the Pacific Market in Seattle for a job, when he was coming up, a kid. He told me a story once about, and I believe this was with Soundgarden, maybe very, very early days, but we were driving in a car once, and he told me a story about how he used to find houses that were like dilapidated houses. And as a band, they would find the person that owned the home that was not, it was like a, like an abandoned home kind of thing. And he would find these houses and contact the owners and say like, let us live in your house and we'll fix it for you. And let us, live there cost-free, rent-free, but we're going to fix it up for you, and we'll stay for a year, and at the end of the whole thing, you'll be able to rent it. And I was blown away by that. So they would go in and like literally, I guess, move in there and then drywall and paint, do whatever repairs were necessary, and fix the house up. And it was like their band house where they would practice and stuff. And that is incredible, That's like some real salt of the earth kind of stuff. so he really always had an appreciation, like never made you feel like you were beneath him or anything, even though he was a rock star and all that. He was one of you. And so in the course of being in a band, I can remember things happening because we played like 300 plus gigs as a band. And he really wanted it like to feel and be like a band. He wanted us to, and we hung like a band, we fought like a band. I mean, not with Chris because he tended to travel alone and be, by himself on a fairly regular basis. But us as a band, and then sometimes he would be with us, But he wanted us to interact like a band and wanted it to feel like a band, and it did feel like a band. We became a band even though we were like essentially sidemen playing his music. And we interacted like a band. So I remember having problems on the road, like things would come up as they do with anything, where personal interactions or things. And I remember, one thing where I got in a fight with like one of the other guys, not a band guy. I won't go into details or whatever, but it just got heated over email, over something, and it was bad, and largely my fault, really. And he wrote me an email, because he was in on the email exchange, and it said, what are you for? And then he put a happy face after it and said, you guys work this out or something like that. And it was like your big brother grabbing you and smacking you in the face. Come on, dude, what are you doing? Smarten up, like that. And I immediately kind of clued in that what I was doing was, I was seeing things one way and not looking at the big picture. And he really taught me how to look at that big picture and see the overall situation for what it was. And I was being, obtuse or whatever. I was largely my fault in that situation. And I went to the fellow that I was having the disagreement with and apologized. And we're friends now, and everything's great, And Chris really he really changed my the way that I look at situations and stuff by doing that, like to see the big picture and to not just see my little issue or whatever it was I was having. I wasn't looking at the overall situation correctly. And that was, he really taught me that. So there was other times in the band where other guys in the organization had problems. And these were things that maybe sometimes, in certain groups would have gotten you fired, because people didn't want to deal with that. They think it was unprofessional. Chris never saw it that way. He always had your back, even when you were maybe in the wrong or, did something that was out of line or did something that created some issue on the tour or something that maybe would cause him to, slightly be put out personally or financially or different things like that, and he would always have your back. And I started to I realized he treated you like a band member, like it was a band, it was a team. Just because you fucked up or whatever, he wasn't gonna he'd give you the chance to kind of redeem yourself, and he was like a big brother like that, to kind of set you straight and stuff. So I learned so much from him. So the other thing that I learned from him was, I think back to the last gig I played with him, which was it was January 2016. I did a benefit show with him. It wasn't a benefit; it was a private gig, but it was at the Roxy in LA, and it was a blast. And I'm so glad that I got to do that gig. But he really challenged you always to do your best, and he really wanted to push it on stage and go above and beyond. So I'll tell you two quick stories about that. This past January, he emailed me and said, would you be interested in doing this gig, and asked me to put a band together for it. He didn't have a solo band really at this point, and said, can you put these guys together and rehearse them, and I'll send you a set list. And I was like, absolutely, dude. I'm so stoked to get to play with you. So, I would love to do it. So he sent me a song list, and it was about 25 songs. I was like, wow, okay. But the gig was about 2 weeks out, so I had to put the band together. And a lot of the songs were off Higher Truth, his latest solo album, and I'd never played them. And I started to realize a lot of them were, acoustic-based and alternate tunings. And it was like, okay. So I went to school and, really, practiced hard for 2 weeks. We had 2 rehearsals, one without Chris and one with Chris. And, we worked really hard to get it together. And I also remember it was a very limited budget for the gig. And he didn't want to. He wanted to do it as a four-piece: guitar, bass, drums, and him. But some of the music, like this wonderful soul song that he covered called "Stay With Me, Baby," and some of the music just sort of, I thought, really required keys. So I said, "Look, don't worry about it. We're gonna do this right. I'm gonna get a keyboard player that's outstanding, and I'll handle it. Like I'll take care of it." And I got my friend Jebin Bruni to come out and play keys, and so we did the gig as keys, bass, drums, and Chris. And I remember getting on stage. He played one or two songs solo, and then the band came up, and he wanted to play the song "Dead Wishes" off of Higher Truth next. And it's a little challenging, like to get on stage. It's a finger picking part that's kind of like, I don't know if it's Travis picking or what it is. It's open tuning. And I got up there on stage beside him, and I hadn't played with him in a few years, and I was a little nervous, because I wanted to kick the shit out of this song. And I got up and we started playing it and doing it. There's background vocals in it, and we played this song. And at the end of the tune, he looked at me and smiled and clapped me on the shoulder, And that's how he was. He's like, "You did it," And he knew it was challenging. And then that set the tone for the rest of the gig. And we had an absolutely stellar gig that night. And I'm just so thankful that we got to do that show. I just can't believe we're not going to get to do it again. But playing "Say Hello to Heaven" and doing it that one last time. Oh man, and I remember having the feeling that I'm better at this now. We got to do this again. I'm better at this than when we did the band, 2007 to 2010. Like having a really good, confident show. And so, yeah, the keyboard player, Jebin, was fantastic, and he came out and he played a blistering solo on Billie Jean. Chris covered Billie Jean on the Carry On album. And he just had a really good time, and he sent me an email afterwards, and he was so appreciative for my help and everybody's help, contributing to making for such a great show. And he said, "We got to figure out a way to do this again soon." So that was my hope. Was like I just wanted. I sort of served a role in his band, I guess, when I was in it as a liaison, helping with the music. And he would email me and say, "This is back when we started," and say, "I really want to try this song off of Euphoria Morning or something." And so I would say, "Hey, we got to do this one at Soundcheck today," and that was part of my role in that band, I guess. So we were all equals. I don't want to say I was the MD or something. I don't think it was like that. But he kind of took it upon himself to contact me, and he would let me know, and so then I guess I would help facilitate getting that together. Okay, so one more story about that and a similar challenging event. I remember playing in Ventura. The Ventura Theater, I believe, is the name of the venue. And so this would be 2008 or 9 or something. And he wanted to do a whole bunch of new songs. So we had a new set list of that he wanted to tackle. Not a set list, but he had I think it was about 12 new tunes that at some point, it was songs off Euphoria Morning and solo songs and stuff we hadn't played before. And they were challenging. And I remember getting into it and feeling like, man, I'm a little, he wanted to do them at Soundcheck at the Ventura Theater. So I remember learning them, but maybe I should have spent more time preparing. And I remember getting into the Ventura Theater at Soundcheck and trying to get through all these songs. And it was it was the one time I remember in our tenure in his band where I felt like we sort of didn't get this together enough for him. We should have been working on this a few days earlier or something. And nothing on the other guys. I was taking that on myself. That's the way I felt about my personal, attitude about it. And I always prided myself on being really prepared and stuff. So I remember going to his dressing room before the show. He used to write a set list every night. No two sets were the same. So I remember going up to his dressing room about 45 minutes before the gig and saying, "Dude, I'm sorry, I felt like we just didn't quite have it together for you at Soundcheck. And, I'm sorry about that, but, we'll get on these and we'll get them learned." Full well thinking that he would pick, a few of the songs we had gone over that day and put them into the set for that night. But I just felt the need to kind of apologize or something. And he was like, "Oh, no problem, it's all good." We got the set about 20 minutes later down in our dressing room. 12 songs all lined up from song 1 all the way down. It was those songs, you know, and it was just like, oh shit. And it was like the big, like, screw you guys, you're going to get up on stage and play it, you know. That's how he was, fearless, you know, like fearless. Just wanted to get up and do, and I learned so much from that, because I have a tendency to be maybe reserved or something, or too, you know what I mean? Maybe I don't know if it's fear or what. He was fearless when it came to that shit, and he put me on that path so much more towards being, you know, just get out there and do it, you know, on stage. And I learned so much from that. A couple more stories about gigs. I remember playing, opening for Aerosmith in 2007. It was June 2007. We did 3 or 4 dates with Aerosmith. And so I remember playing in Belgium. And we were at the hotel in Belgium, waiting in the lobby, and the van forgot to, the van never showed up to take us to the gig, and it was a festival outside of town, a big rock festival. And we waited and waited and waited. The gig was like 90 minutes away, and it was like literally an hour and 45 minutes before we were supposed to play. And we ended up all piling into taxis because that van never came. And we drove an hour and well, we had to get a police escort to get into the festival. I remember that because all the festival traffic pulling in and stuff, and it was just crazy, like going like 100 miles an hour in taxis for an hour and a half. And I think that it was like €1,000 a taxi, something like that. We had to put all the band and Chris and his wife and everybody in those taxis. So we got to the gig, and we had about 8 minutes to spare. Put on your in-ear pack and get everything going, and then run out on stage and play in front of 60,000 people. But it felt like triumph, like we did it, we made it. We got on stage and played, and then had a great time watching Aerosmith and stuff like that afterwards. And it was amazing. The next gig, I believe, was London, Hyde Park with Aerosmith. It was my birthday. It was raining. I remember that. And I remember Brian May being there from Queen, standing on the side of the stage watching the show, which was incredible. There's another thing about Chris is that you would have people like Jimmy Page and Brian May showing up at your shows and watching you play, which was just like, what? It was music people and actors, Brad Pitt and Chris Rock, and all these people would come to your shows, and then afterwards, they were just fans of his. They loved him so much, respected him so much. Anyway, so Hyde Park, we playing that show, and I remember having an issue at because I'm always in my head, trying to get out of my head, but I remember having an issue with tuning or something, and I'm tuning, and I could hear Chris kind of talking about something and saying it was somebody's birthday. And it's this guy's birthday over here, we're going to sing him happy birthday. And I'm like, oh, great, I got a minute to tune while this happens, and I'm tuning, and then I realized that he's pointing at me, and it was my birthday. And I had forgotten, and the whole crowd is like 60,000 people at Hyde Park is all of a sudden singing me happy birthday. He's pointing at me from the ramp, the front of the stage, and I'm over at my guitar stuff. I'm just like stunned, That's not things that happen all the time on tour with people that you play with, The fact that he would remember that on stage and care enough to because that's something I'm going to remember my whole life, Crowd at Hyde Park singing happy birthday. One last gig story. So we played in Israel in 2009. It was May or June, I believe. And Israel's a difficult place to get to and play. It's expensive. It's logistically can be hard to get there. Visas, security concerns, things like that. I'm not hip to all the the trials and tribulations of trying to get to Israel and play, but I know it's difficult. And so when you go there and play, the people seem very appreciative to have you there. And it was a great crowd. I remember the crowd that night. It was about 7,000 people. And we had a really, really fun, stellar show. And I remember the people singing along to all the words of every song, including all of his solo material. It really struck me that they really knew his solo stuff inside and out. And I was impressed by that. And so the song Preaching the End of the World we played. You could go find this on YouTube. I'm sure it's out there, including what I'm about to talk about. Look for Israel 2009, Chris Cornell, and it'll pop up. But right before we played Preaching the End of the World, he said something on stage that I thought was so profound, and I got kind of emotional just right there. And then playing the song was emotional because it's so hauntingly beautiful, watching all the people singing. But he said something along the lines of, I was really depressed and down and in a dark place when I wrote this song, but I made it. Like I made it out, you know? And I think about, in that moment I thought about Lane and Kurt Cobain and I thought, God, he did, he made it, And he did, he made it a long, good, long time, So the other thing people should know is that I feel like he always made music for absolutely the right reasons, which is because he just loved it. He loved to go out and play, he loved to perform. He would perform anywhere. As many people that saw us could attest to. I mean, God, we were in Tromsø, Norway, 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. We were in South America, in Chile. And, the South America shows were cathartic because he'd never been there with Soundgarden or with Audioslave. So that was the first time when we played down there that a lot of the fans ever got to see him. In Mexico and in Chile and in Brazil. Magical gigs, the best crowds in the world, and some of the best moments I can ever remember being on stage. So I remember playing Mexico City towards the end of that South America run, and we did a gig, and kind of it was like a big club gig, really. Some of the gigs we did down there were huge, like 25,000 people, but this was like maybe 2,000 people in a great big club in Mexico City. And I remember the whole street down the side of the venue was all lined with bootleg vendors. And I guess that was just typical in Mexico. I still have a coffee mug I bought for like $2. It says Chris Cornell Carry On Tour 2007. It's like great. But and so the other thing I bought that night, and I wore it on the encore, was this Bad Motorfinger shirt. And I bought it. And, it's too small for me now, that's for sure. I don't know why. I used to have like wishful thinking about t-shirt sizes. Lately I've gotten a little more realistic, but I put this on and wore it on the encore, and it was great to walk out with this, and yeah, I've got some photos from that night where I'm just laying into the Les Paul, and he's on top of me with his hand on my head, and I got the Bad Motorfinger shirt on. Those are some of my favorite photos from the whole experience of touring with him. One of the other things I wanted to share was just like what a big heart this guy had. I helped him a lot putting together his studio post playing with him in the band. When he was already sort of geared towards going back and doing the Soundgarden reunion, I still stayed in touch with him and saw him quite a bit. And I basically, you guys have seen, the ones that know me out there, have seen my studio and stuff. He wanted help putting together a home studio, and you're Chris Cornell, you can't like really go into Guitar Center or whatever, it's hard. So he used to hit me up, like for instance, he would use loopers a lot on tour, like Jam Mans. He hit me up one day and said, "Is there any way you could go and find me some looping pedals, because I want to incorporate them into my..." This is when he started doing the songbook tours. So I would go to the music store and try out all the different loopers, like Boss and Digitech and stuff. And I remember thinking the Jam Man is really, really good. So I got him 2 Jam Mans, and I would take them to him, and so that he didn't have to, go to the store and all that. And he really trusted me on this stuff, like on gear and my opinions on things and stuff, which I loved. That was like meant a lot to me, that he put a lot of faith in me. And so anyway, I helped him with his home studio, and basically sort of duplicated my home studio setup at his place when he had a place here in LA. And I would go over there and install software and get things plugged in and all that kind of stuff, just help him setting things up. And when he needed help, I would be there for him. I'd happy to be there for him. You guys know I love doing this stuff. I love gear, and I just love being part of it. And to help him be creative in any way I could was, and he similarly, like for instance, when I was getting my green card, he wrote me this really beautiful letter, wonderful letter, to give to the authorities, the consular immigration people and stuff like that. You have to sort of get letters of recommendation, that kind of thing, really. And he wrote me a fantastic letter. And I'll always remember, actually, on my final green card appointment when I went, I was at the consulate in Montreal, Canada, and I went in and did it. And the guy there was very nice, the U.S. consular official. He said, well, I can give you the green card today. Congratulations, and you've met our criteria and stuff. And I was so happy. And right after that, he said to me, so tell me some stories about Chris Cornell and your time playing with him. I'll never forget that. People just love Chris. So anyway, so I was helping him with his home studio. That's the story I wanted to tell, and getting it together. And over the course of a couple of years, and he was really stoked with everything. He had, a set of Atom monitors and some API mic pre's like the one that I have, and a Chandler Neves and different things that he got, and he was just really happy with everything. Got the his microphone, the MA200, which I also have from Mojave, and he was really happy with that. That was like a recommendation of mine, I think. So he was just he was just appreciative, and he called me one day at my studio, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm nothing." I had a studio in Santa Monica. I said, "I'm just getting some work done or whatever." He said, "Can you come over? I got something here I want to show you." I said, "Sure." So he wasn't that far away, and I was home, and I got in the car and I drove over there, and he was out front playing basketball with his kid when I got there. And he said, "Just a second." He went inside the house and he came out and he handed me a guitar case, and it was a Martin D28 that he gave to me. Beautiful D28, something I've always wanted, And it's, truth be told, it's one of the nicest things that anybody's ever given me in my life. And he said, I just wanted to have you to have this for all the, you're always there for me and the nice things you've done for me. And that's how he was, he did not have to do that. He was just appreciative and giving and kind and salt of the earth, and appreciated you and your efforts, and just a really, really stellar guy. So, he got busy at times, and he would come and go from your life, and there would be maybe stretches of 3 or 4 months where I wouldn't talk to him, something like that. But then he'd come back around and hit you up and just say, "Hey," or I would write to him, or he would write to me and say, "I was thinking about you, and just wanted to say hi, and I miss you." And he was just one of those people that, I knew would always be there. And if I needed anything at all, I really felt like he was one of those people that I could get in touch with and contact, and he would be there. So that's the kind of guy he was. So in the last few months, all I can say is he was stoked in writing music and working in his home studio. Once again, I helped him in a new home studio that he'd set up. And if you guys are guitar players out there, you know that I love the whole load box, reactive load impulse response thing. And I set him up with that whole setup in his home studio. And he was blown away with his ability to be able to track and record in the middle of the night. And we sent him a Sir PT100 head. He was really enjoying that, and using it at home with the load box and the impulse responses. I would make him channel strips, and he would I'd get it on FaceTime with him, and sit there and walk him through how to import the channel strips into Logic and stuff like that, and pull them up so that, and he'd say, "Okay, I think I got it all figured out." And then the next day, I remember he sent me an email, "Unfucking believable," was all it said. And he said, "I'm blown away," in another email, just like he was having a great time with it. And that made me so happy, and I was able to help him on his creative path and get ideas out. So he was really stoked. And, he was able to embark out on this new Soundgarden tour, and he was talking about, writing for the next record, and he had 2 PT100 heads out on tour. One of them's mine, actually. It's still out there. You know, it's my main touring head. I sent to Miami when they started rehearsals, and then he got another one, and so he wanted 2, of course. He had 2. And he started using both of them at once and kind of blending the sounds and stuff. He was using them in a really unique, cool way, like using 2 amps at once, sometimes the clean on the one and the dirty on the other. He was really enjoying that, and so we would email about that a little bit and stuff, and he would say how he was really, really digging it. And it was the last time we spoke was about that kind of stuff, and it would be about 2.5 weeks ago or so. He was just kind of working out the kinks, but saying he was really enjoying it. So that's it, really. I hope that some of these stories were interesting, and some of the insight. You know, my thoughts are, I can't really talk about it, but my thoughts are really with his family right now. That's the main thing. And we all love him so much. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.